Today I'm talking to a woman who trained at film school and who started her working career in commercials. Then she moved to animations, and recently I attended a panel where she was talking about how to be a voice actor, which I thought would be interesting, but it was even more interesting than I expected. So I'm catching up with her again today. And it seems that some of her biggest fans are the actors who actually work with her. So although Miller Lee was making jokes about in that panel about being paid. Welcome, Christy Reed.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Can you tell me, I mean, you went off to film school, so you always planned to work in film?
I originally started out as a screenwriter. That was what I originally wanted to do. So my background, film, I have a master's degree in film. My undergraduate degree was in English with an interest in literature of some nature. And then towards the end of my English degree, someone had mentioned screenwriting. And I was like, well, that's cool. I really love movies and I love writing, so let me kind of get into that. And it was in getting into screenwriting that I sort of developed an interest in movie making in general. So I originally started out as a screenwriter and then expanded that to a director screenwriter and kind of followed that path from there.
And you started working in commercials when you first graduated from film school?
I did, and that was at the time a really popular way for directors to get started. And it was an easier way to get in than trying to make, your first feature film, which costs millions of dollars, or if not, in the very least, several $100,000. Whereas film, commercial, you could do much cheaper and much less money, do a spec spot, and then take it from there. And that worked out okay. And I got signed. I was represented in Los Angeles and in Canada, but quickly realized that it wasn't the right home for me. And I always knew that animation would probably be a good place for me. And it was just a matter of time for me really to figure that out and find a way to get into it and to kind of get settled in there.
So what was it like shifting from commercials that are very visual to voice acting where the visual's done for you, or voice directing, I should say?
It wasn't a hard shift for me. I think that even when I was doing commercials, I tended to do a very animated style of commercials, sort of a hyper-real thing. So that was already, a language that I spoke easily. And so it was a very natural shift for me to get into animation. And one of the things that I like in animation is that because the performance is done entirely with the voice, you don't really have facial expressions that you can use that you would normally rely on in, say, on camera work. You've got to really deliver the entire performance with your voice alone. And that means subtlety probably isn't going to work most of the time. And that's fine with me. I'm fine with subtlety as long as it's obvious. So I go big. And animation really lends itself to that style. So it worked. It was a good transition.
So what have been your inspirations that have developed that style of yours?
I have always been a big fan of cartoons. Even when I was a little kid, I was the kid who woke up in the morning here in the States. Saturday mornings is our big cartoon morning. And when I was little, I grew up in a very small rural community that didn't have 24-hour TV cycle. Like literally the TV came on at, say, 6:30 in the morning, and that's when the cartoon started. And I would be there at 6:27 with my bowl of cereal, waiting for the cartoons to start, and spend my entire Saturday morning there. That's what I did on Saturday mornings. I would watch every cartoon I could. So that's why it was always in my back of my head. I knew, although I thought I wanted to be the serious filmmaker, that animation was probably the right home for me.
Wow. And these days, what do you actually watch as opposed to work with?
You mean like what cartoons do I watch now just for fun?
Yes.
I like a lot of stuff. I like everything from The Simpsons to Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends was a really great series that I like. So there isn't any one thing. I just want it to be something that kind of sweeps me away. Maybe it's something I haven't seen before, or maybe it's a character profile that I haven't seen before. So I just look for things that I think are interesting and new, but there isn't really one thing. Simpsons, I have to say, I like Simpsons, it's true, but I haven't actually watched more of the recent seasons. But for a show that's been on as long as it has, it's stayed amazingly well written, which is an accomplishment in and of itself.
Well, there aren't many TV series, especially ones that aren't soapies that have lasted that long.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing how well they've done it. And I think that there are probably wits and wisdoms to use throughout your life just from lines of The Simpsons.
Yes. Do you have a particular one that comes to mind?
Oh, no, but there are definitely, I have one for many situations. There, whenever I can find a way to recycle a Simpsons quote, I definitely will try and shoehorn one in. There are more than one situation that I find Simpsons lend themselves to.
Can you walk us through the key aspects of what your job actually entails?
Sure. So my job essentially is to get a performance from the actor that works for the producer in the show. So let's say it's a brand new show and we haven't established any of the actors yet. And I've got a producer sitting with me and we've sat and we've talked about how we want the characters to sound. But so far they've, for the most part, just been either, if it's original animation, they've just been drawings we've seen on paper, or maybe some animatics, some sketches of it, and dialogue. We haven't really brought them to life yet. And an actor, that's really what their step in it does. But it's my job to make sure that the vision that we've established from the producing team gets translated to the actor in a language that is something that the actor can take and is a directable piece of dialogue. So the reason I exist as opposed to a producer just telling the actor, no, make it funnier, is that's not necessarily all that directable. You want it to be or actionable. The actor needs to look at something in a way that makes them make sense to make it as an actionable direction. And that's my job, is to develop the language between the actor and us and to make it be in a way that creates the character that we want in the end. So we'll start out in a very different, a whole different style of beginnings. It can be they've already auditioned and they nailed the audition. And so we'll say, okay, let's just match this. We're going to play the audition. It's great. Do exactly what you did there. Or it could be like, okay, this was the audition and it's the right idea, but we want to change it up a little bit. And that can be, we want to make the guy sound more intense, or we want to make the guy sound a little darker or whatever. And so it's a matter of finding the right descriptors to get the actor to get that performance.
What kinds of projects have you been working on?
Right now, well, most of the year was spent doing season 1 and 2 of Persona 4, which was a video game turned into an anime. And that has had a huge fan following and I think has come out fairly well. We just finished up Persona 4 season 2. I'm not quite sure when the street date is for the DVDs, but our end of it is wrapping up right now, so it should be getting up there on the street pretty soon. I've been working on a show for Viz, which is a show called Lagrange, which is on their Neon Alley channel. And that I know is already airing, and we start season 2. I'll be writing it by the end of the year, and then we'll be airing it by, we'll be recording it in January, so the air date will be not long after that. I also do little bits and things on video games. I am a voice director on the video game League of Legends. I have a session tomorrow with them, and they release a couple new character. They release new characters monthly, so it's a good gig because it just is something that's constantly going, and it's fun. It's beautiful artwork, and it's a great game. So it's been, it's a number of different things, and fortunately, I've been able to stay busy.
Can you give us an example of your job in translating to the actors from the work that you've just been doing?
Like what specifically the actors have I been working with, or?
Well, maybe yes, but also in the context of the developing of the language. So you can give us a concrete example of how you would explain it to the actor.
Sure. So in say Lagrange, for example, the lead actress is a girl named Kira Buckland, who is relatively new to the industry. She was literally a talent who was found at a convention. She was found at Anime Expo in Los Angeles. She showed up at a panel where we were having essentially cold tryouts, and she had promise. Didn't nail it, but she showed promise. And she caught the ear of a producer there, and the producer said, come to the studio and start working on your career. And she'd already kind of been moving towards that, and she committed to it. She moved from Alaska down to Los Angeles, which is not a small move.
Wow.
And yeah, she committed. And she's done some good parts. This is probably one of the bigger roles that she's ever done, this bit for Lagrange. She's the lead character. She did an audition that was very good, and it was one of those situations where like, okay, the audition's great. We just need you to sort of get comfortable with the character and understand why she does certain things. And so that's a good place to start, because already from the audition, the actor kind of has a good feel for her voice matches the actor very well. But there's going to be nuances that we're going to have to stumble through in the first couple episodes before she really gets a feel for the character. And that's why the first couple episodes, even if like go back to The Simpsons, if you look at season 1 and 2, even after The Simpsons had gotten their own primetime slot, season 1 is not the voice that is now running. It's, it all changes. The actors find the characters, and that's, the same thing that's happening, with any couple of first episodes. And so what I will do is just try to find the little scenes that help give you definition of the characters. Things that can be nuances to the average viewer are going to be the definitive thing to an actor's mind that lets them know this is who this character is, and this is what makes them tick.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's been the highlight of your career so far?
There really hasn't been a pinnacle, and I don't think that, and I think it's smart not to look at a career as a pinnacle because you're never going to plateau. I mean, hopefully you won't. You're constantly looking for something that takes you one step up. If you get to a spot where you think, this is it, I'm done, well, then your work's going to do that too. So I'm always looking for something new and more exciting. I just have been lucky that I keep kind of having that. So hopefully that same trajectory will stay in place. Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. It's a good way of looking at it too.
Yeah.
So what's been your most challenging project, and why was it the most challenging to date?
There's a couple of challenging ones. Persona 4 was a little challenging because it was a game that where the English actors were already established. It wasn't in a game that I had worked on or directed. It was done at a different studio and by a different team there. And we picked up the animation, which is common. Very often a video game would done somewhere, and then the series would done elsewhere, and vice versa. The series say starts out like Kung Fu Panda. Here in the States, the television series is done at a record studio. The game is done someplace else. It's just different how it works. So I was given this whole cast. It's a large ensemble cast, and it has a huge fan following. So everybody's already waiting to hear that I get it right. So I essentially had to go through, and it's a huge game. There's many games. I couldn't possibly play the hundreds of hours that exist to get a feel for these characters. But fortunately, I could go online to YouTube and see some of the cut scenes where the actors talk to each other and get a feel for what's going on. So I just watched hours and hours of it, and to make sure I got in my head the right voice, the right nuances of the characters, and the right interactions they all had with each other to try and translate that to a script. So that had its challenges, and I think it came out fairly well. So there's always different things out there, and we talked a little bit in the Melbourne panel, or one of the panels. I did a whole season last year of a show called Yu-Gi-Oh, which has a bit of a fan base to it, and we did 26 episodes of it, and it was a really great show, but at the same time, it was in a lawsuit with 4Kids America, and we didn't win. So it was a show that I was actually really proud of and excited to see it air, and then it shelved, and that just happens. That's just part of being in the industry.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, but that's life in the big city. So you just gotta, like I said, constantly looking for the trajectory to go up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the trajectory going up, is there a dream project that you haven't worked on that you'd love to work on?
Well, there's definitely shows that you see come and go, and you're like, why didn't I get that? Or I would have loved to have done that. I think I was asked this either in one of the cons, either in Melbourne or Auckland. I would have loved to have worked on Death Note. Death Note is a great anime series, and that would have been one I would love to have done, but I think that actually got done in Canada. So there's always things I look at, and I think, whose door do I have to knock on to say, so yeah, there's definitely stuff out there that I look at and would want to do.
Mm-hmm. How does an aspiring voice actor break into the industry?
It's getting easier and easier. It
I'm
used
surprised.
to be. I know, it is. I think that there are, with the, sort of the shrinking world, through connectivity, there are ways to reach out to me or other actors, and you'll find that it's a very welcoming community. Voice acting is a tight community, and people will say that's a little, insular at times, but I don't think that's true. I just think that they look out for each other, and not in a way that is protective of the career, but in a way that supports the whole community. I've heard of voice actors, calling up and saying, listen, I just did this great audition for this great show. I know you and I are in the same vocal range, but I think you'd be great at it too. Go ahead and give it a shot. And you don't necessarily have that in the on-camera world. It's much more competitive. So for a voice actor who wants to get started, first of all, start practicing. Be an actor first. That is the most important thing. But to break into the industry itself, contact somebody like myself. Contact another actor. I am reachable through either Facebook or Twitter. My Twitter handle is Instant Christy, and you can contact me. And I'm very willing to listen to a demo, give tips, that kind of thing. And we're always looking for new people. So it's not as hard as people think it is. You would necessarily, if we're going to be doing it in the States, need an American accent. But at the same time, it's something that you can do. And you just have to put the effort into it.
We have some notable Australians who've managed to acquire American accents in the roles that they've played.
Yes, and done quite well with that.
Mm-hmm.
We have them on lots of television shows here in the States.
Yes. So, can you explain what should go into a demo reel?
Yeah. So, first of all, it never hurts to start playing with voices, but to get your demo reel, make sure, A, that it's good quality. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be something that first the producer hears it and says, I can't, it sounds terrible. That's immediately going to be off-putting. You want to do everything you can presentation-wise with it to make the producer look at it or the casting director look at it and say, I want to hear this person. I want to know more about them. But definitely do a wide spectrum of voices, but don't go out of what your comfort zone is. That will immediately be detectable by a casting director. If you're a guy who doesn't necessarily have a big, deep voice and you're trying to force it down really low, we're going to hear that that's not necessarily something that's comfortable for you. So make sure that what you put on there is within your comfort zone. But the most important thing I think that gets overlooked on demo reels is your natural speaking voice. There are a lot of very good roles just to hear how you normally talk. And also, I might be able to hear your voice and hear a voice that you might not think I can get you to do from your natural speaking voice. But by knowing where you're coming from, I know how far I can either push you up or down or whatever. So don't overlook that and really showcase that. Most hero roles, Johnny Bosch will tell you this, Yuri Lowenthal will tell you this, that their wheelhouse when they're doing heroic lead roles is their natural speaking voice. So it's an important voice to really work on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So should they, like with a demo reel, would it be ideal to start with your natural speaking voice and then branch out? Or how do you structure it?
The structure is up to you, but I think that starting with your natural speaking voice is great, and then go from there. And you can even sort of wink and nod in the performance of whatever it is that this is my natural speaking voice, or whatever it is that you want to do to let somebody know that this is where I'm starting from, and now let's see how far I can take it. But don't overlook it. It's a very important foundation to start from.
Wow. When should an aspiring actor develop a demo reel?
An aspiring actor should develop a demo reel when they feel like their talent is not necessarily fully developed, but presentable. So don't if you just started out and you've taken maybe one class and you've recorded this demo reel, think really hard before you give it to a casting director, because you only give one chance to make that impression. If you're lucky, if 3 years from now they'll listen to it again, because probably 3 years from now is when it's going to be really, really good, and that's when you really want them to listen to it, but they're like, yeah, I've already heard that. So make sure you put your effort into it and really give it some good introspective and distance before you decide to give it to that casting director and think that it's going to be the best performance you can give them. That is, I think, the biggest mistake, is that you're so quick to give it to a casting director or a director and say, look what I've done. Well, make sure it's the best for you think it can be. That's an important step to take.
If this is really important for actors, do directors actually do demo reels?
I think in the beginning they do. At this point in my career, for the most part, my credits are what are used whenever I'm working with somebody who may not know what I've done. And at this point, I haven't personally had a demo reel for quite some time. For the most part, people will go on to the internet site, Internet Movie Database, IMDb, and they'll see what I have on there, and that is at this point, for the most part, my resume. So no, I mean, but there are in the commercial world that's not true because it's such a different. There isn't necessarily a good database for that. They do video demo reels. Those are all online.
Okay. How does a new director get into the industry?
That's a harder question. It isn't as straightforward as the voice actor bit. A new director has to be willing to come at it from any angle possible, in my opinion. You don't think that I'm going to be a director and only direct projects and just stay with directing and try to hone that skill. You will be eating a lot of ramen for the rest of your life if you only take directing jobs when you first start. You have to be willing to take every job in the industry to meet connections, to kind of build your network of people that when it comes that time for someone to throw you a directing project, you're ready. And that's how it's worked for me. That's how it's worked for most of the directors that I know. Even if you get to film school, it doesn't mean you're going to walk out the door and be a director. It means you're going to walk out the door and be a low-paid, entry-level person on a film set somewhere who's overeducated. And that's okay. You just got to know that walking into it, and don't expect that your expectations up here. Put them down here, and whatever happens above that, that's great. So you just got to, and the more you work in every aspect of the industry, the more you, as someone who will ultimately one day be someone helming the ship, will know how all those little parts work and how important they are, and you can make educated decisions as to, we don't need that right now, move forward. So it's not a bad way to round out your education.
Yes. Joe Abercrombie talks about having been a lowly paid tea maker for a film company. And
see, yes, I was a production assistant on many things. I have, done lots of jobs that I would rather not ever do again. But that's okay. And, now I know where I don't want to go. So it's good. It's fine. You learn stuff on all that stuff.
Yes. And as you say, it's a matter of, as a director or a producer, you're putting the pieces of the jigsaw together. So having that broader experience really helps.
Yeah, it becomes invaluable. And it helped me, and even, I learned aspects of sound when I was first starting out, which has helped me working in the audio end of animation immensely, because I will know things that, maybe some audio engineer doesn't think I know. When he says, you can't do that, I say, yes, you can. You hit that button and that button, and we can go. So it helps you to be educated.
Yes. How can directors improve their directing skills?
It's one of those things where you just have to keep doing it. I think that it is like so many things. It's a muscle that has to develop, and you have to do it through experience. So if you want to be a voice director, start working with as many actors as possible, and that can be working with local theater companies. You can do little stage plays. And it's learning how to develop your language with actors to get a performance, and that only improves the experience. I can't imagine any other way to do it. If you want to be a film director, start making short movies. It's something that's easy to do now. You can make them with your phone. It doesn't necessarily matter. Just constantly be doing it. You're going to have to put the effort into it to get the result. Mm-hmm. So just keep doing little things. And local theater is great for working with actors, and cheap cameras can be had for making movies now. You just keep doing them.
So you're saying that if you can't afford great technology, just do it on what you can afford.
Yeah, and write the script so that it makes sense for the cheap technology. Make it so that it is from the point of view of somebody with a phone. Figure out a way to make that what is at this point, a deficit by not having enough money, something that it becomes an attribute that makes the film work.
So it's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, is that, and the more you can develop that skill to be resourceful, that works in every aspect of your career, life, everything.
Mm-hmm. How can people improve their acting skills?
There are, in Los Angeles alone, a number of different workshops and classes and communities for you to constantly be working on your craft. And the best actors I know, actors who are successful and already on shows, never stop taking workshops, never stop working on their skill, never stop learning and trying something new. A lot of times I talk about when an actor goes into a booth, they walk in with this invisible bag of tricks. And it's the things that they've learned over their career that in this situation, when this doesn't work, I reach into my little bag of tricks and I try this, because I've learned that doing this with my voice or doing this with my performance helps me get over whatever current obstacle I'm facing. And that only comes from doing different things. Working with other actors is another really great way to improve your skill, because suddenly you're looking at somebody else and realizing how they get over obstacles, which if you're constantly working in a vacuum by yourself, you're really limiting the scope of how you can learn. So start working workshops, find them in your community, do local theater. Local theater is great for learning things, and don't be afraid to say, I need to learn, even though you think that you are taking every class you possibly can, because you never stop learning. You never stop. As a craft person and as an artist, you never stop learning your craft. That's, again, it goes back to that not plateauing, but constantly trying to do something better.
You were talking earlier about recommending that directors direct local theatre. Would you recommend, like an actor who is aspiring and hasn't broken into the industry yet, would you recommend that they participate in local theatre and radio and stuff?
Yes, and radio. Radio is another one that's great too. Radio for any voice actor is a great place to start. It allows you to get familiar with how some of the instruments work, the technology works. It allows you to understand mic technology and mic placement. A really big thing for voice actors, understanding how the microphone works and where to place yourself in relationship to the mic, and what things will and won't record well on the mic. You have to learn that. It's a technical aspect of the job that you have to learn. And so radios are great for that. And if you don't have a class that teaches you how to voice act, go to your radio station and play around on the mic when they have off hours. And volunteer there or intern there or whatever. And also, but local theater. Local theater lends itself very well to animation, because unlike on camera, in local theater, you've got to sell your performance to someone several rows back from you. So when the camera's right here, you can be really small and nuanced and do these things, but you can't do that in theater. And the same as animation, because you're selling the performance with just your voice. You have to put a lot more into the performance. It's a much bigger performance. And theater is much more of a transition to animation than on camera is going to be.
Oh, really? Oh, on the subject of microphones, I did drama just at high school, and I've also taken some public speaking classes since, and I've been told, on the one hand, you should hold the microphone 6 inches from your face and project from the diaphragm, and on the other hand, you should be holding it like a lollipop, like you're going to lick it. Is this to do with microphones, or is this just different schools of thought, or what's going on here?
Microphones. It's probably different microphones. It's probably both. For the most part, when you go into a proper recording studio, you're going to have an audio engineer who's going to place the mic for you, and he's going to do it exactly as it should be done. So that's nothing for you to worry about. They're going to put the mic at an angle that's going to be so close to your mouth that it's going to feel like it's doing a dental x-ray. I mean, it is invasive. And it's going to, and they're sensitive mics, and they can literally hear the food digest in your stomach. So yes, they are it's sensitive mics. But so there are different techniques depending on the way the microphone picks up sound. So it just depends on the mic and how it best is used. And I would suggest whatever mic you get, do several tests and find its sweet spot. Maybe even do a little internet search and find what other people say is the best way to do it, and use that, because every mic is going to be a little different, and every engineer will tell you, with this mic, I position it this way or that way, depending on which mic they're using. And an actor, and depending on where the actor talks. One of the things that's really interesting is that when you have a mic that's sensitive, you're picking up all kinds of different things that you don't necessarily hear when you're talking to someone, but because this mic is amplifying so much, you'll hear someone's mouth noise. You'll hear these little clicks and pops of all of that. And for us in the recording room and not in the booth itself, it's painful. It's like, oh my God, get that, make them stop, whatever it is. And there's things you can do as an actor. Green apples are one, because it causes your mouth to salivate more, so it makes it less dry, which is what causes that clicking sound. Drinking water, that kind of thing. But also the mic can be repositioned by the engineer to pick up less of that mouth noise. So there's a number of different things about the angle and placement and everything else to get the best sound you can possibly get. It's going to change per mic.
So this, just the microphone alone is a really complex thing that needs to be factored in when you're doing a demo reel.
Yes, it definitely does. That's where it goes back to doing a good demo reel with good quality sound. So make sure that when you put together, if your performance is fantastic but your sound is terrible, you're going to really do yourself a series of injustice, because it will overshadow your performance.
Oh. Well, moving on, what makes for a good relationship between a director and an actor?
It is the realization that you both bring something unique to the process. So when I'm really with an actor that I have a really great relationship with, I have an idea of where I want to go, and he or she will take that and surprise me with something I didn't even think we would do. So it's when you guys start to getting a shorthand with you and the actor, where you can get to the point where you realize that you can give them free rein, and they know enough of what you want that they'll just surprise you within the realm of what you're hoping for. And that's just really listening to each other and being careful to appreciate each other's position in the creative process. There is something that each of you bring that is distinctive, and to listen and to work as a unit on that is a really great thing. And once that happens, you just kind of move and you click and you just start moving very quickly, because you've got this shorthand with you and the actor, and you're kind of working as one going through the piece and the dialogue and the performances. When that happens, it's kind of magical, because you just are suddenly, you're thinking it, they're saying it, and it comes out really, really well. When that happens, you can tell. Some of the best performances, I think, come out when those kinds of relationships have developed between an actor and a director.
You certainly have that kind of relationship with Mela Lee. She's got to be one of your biggest fans.
Yeah, Mela and I have have worked on a variety of different projects, and I think that a lot of times I've put Mela in places that are uncomfortable for her. Like, she's like, would have never put myself in this role. It's not something that I would have necessarily imagined I can do. And when that happens, it's my job as a director to get her comfortable with that character and in that world. She talks a lot about the show When They Cry, which I think she was so at a loss for the first couple episodes, because she plays this character who's very sweet and seems very nice, and that's comfortable for Mela. That's great. That's totally her domain. And then the character turns on a dime and will scream at you like some psychotic person who's going to rip your heart out. And she was like, what am I doing, and why am I doing that? And my response is, because you're crazy. So just go there, and whatever you want to think of, a moment when you just wanted to scream at somebody and rip their eyeballs out, that's it. So, and then once we kind of get that pattern, then, and it's fun, because she's like, okay, I trust you, I'm going to go there. Okay, great, I'm not going to stop you. And when that happens, then you're going as far as the character needs to go. But first you had to create that safety net for the actor to trust you, that if I go really big like this and do this, that you're not going to go, what were you thinking? So,
does that kind of thing happen often?
Where an actor goes way beyond what you think it's going to be?
Yes, and then the director says, well, no, what were you thinking?
It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. Sometimes, you if you know the actor well, you can go, okay, that was a choice, but not the right one. But for the most part, you want to be very encouraging for the actor, and you want them to try different things. And so if they try something that was completely wrong, you just say, okay, that's cool. Let's try doing this. Because you don't want them to feel like they can't try something new, because that's what it's about. It's about finding the voice in the character, and there are no one needs to feel self-conscious about that. You're already self-conscious enough as it is. You're alone in a booth that's padded that you can only hear yourself, while the other people are over there who have the power to fire you, talking behind glass that you can't hear what they say. So that is already a situation that's going to make you feel really insecure. I don't need to make it worse. So, and there'll be lots of times when the producer and I will be sitting there, and the actor's been working on it, and we've done a line a couple of times maybe, and I know the actor feels like, oh my gosh, are they going to fire me? I know I'm not getting this. There'll be these, and they can see through the glass these intense discussion between me and someone else, and it could just be that we're deciding something entirely different. But unfortunately, the actor doesn't know, and it's my job to get it on the button and say, we're just talking about these lines 2 lines down, or we're going to be ordering lunch and we're just looking at the menu. Don't worry about it. So you've got to remember that the actor is basically on a spotlight, or in a spotlight the entire time that they're in a session, and it's unnerving. So yeah, you want to create an environment where they feel free to perform and try things.
That whole, sound booth and isolation sounds really scary.
It is, and it can be, and I'm not an actor, so whenever I have to pop into the booth to do weird little things, which occasionally I'll do, like say there's a cat or a dog or something that needs to be voiced, I'll do that, or I may do some like very small incidental character. And when I'm in there, I'm reminded of just how alone you are in that room. It is very, very much like being in a vacuum.
I suppose this comes back to the actor-director relationship, because it's your role to try to make it less of a vacuum?
Yes, exactly. It's my role to make it seem like we are all in the same room together, and that you are in on every conversation that we are having, you are in on our creative process, and you are part of this team, and I want you to feel that way as an actor. That's hard sometimes when you've got a producer who wants to change things drastically and maybe isn't happy with where we're going right now with the performance. So it's my job to make it seem like, even though this person is saying things that are, I want to change this, to smile at the actor the entire time and say, okay, all right, so here's what we're going to do. And to always make them feel like they are in a place where we are encouraging them. So it's just part of the job, and that's one of the most important things with any kind of creative relationship, is to encourage the other person to be creative and to try things, to not make them ever feel awkward about that.
Yeah. So you've gone through, we've gone through a lot about acting and directing. How do actors or directors get into animation specifically? Or anime specifically?
Anime specifically is, it's a good place to start for voice actors, because it is a slightly easier introduction than original animation. Original animation is a little harder to get into than anime, because it's got a little more creativity, a little more freedom, I should say, as opposed to creativity, a little more freedom with the performance, because in original animation you aren't locked into, unless you're a Japanese speaker, but if for English speakers, you aren't locked in to the picture already for original animation. For anime, the picture's there, you're match and flap. So you're essentially have these parameters within which you have to work. So it's a little easier to get into, because not everybody can do that. You do have to develop a skill to act a picture, and that's just a skill. It's not necessarily, true talent. It's something that you can easily get by practice. There are some people who come by it easier, but I think it's because people who have any kind of musical background have a sense of rhythm when they see the picture, and that kind of helps them to hit sync. But it's something that anybody can develop. And the way to do it is to start going to places where you can meet people. Conventions are a great way to start meeting people in the industry. You'll find that for the most part, they're all very approachable. People in the animation world on a whole are very approachable in my experience. And they want to try and bring people in. Like I said before, we're always looking for new talent. So do not be shy about saying, I would like to be a part of the industry, what do I do? And call a studio that you like. If there's a studio that does anime, that it does shows that you really like, and they're in a city that you want to live, call them and say, can I intern there? It's another great way to get experience and decide if you really want to do it, because you'll see it. If it's, aspects of it and flaws. And if it's something that you want to do, you'll see what the reality of it is.
I'm actually surprised that anime is easier than animation to get into.
Really? Yeah, it is. You know, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that just from a fiscal aspect, the original animation pays better in anime. So actors are always going to be going for the job that's going to pay, not always, but frequently they go for the job that pays them more. They have a living to make as well. So anime can be harder to make a living at, but if you're starting out and your expenses are less, it's a great way to start. And when you get into the original animation, you're also getting into things like agents and things like that, which are going to be taking a portion of your income because that's what they do. And so you want to be making more money if they're going to be, to be giving 10 to 20% to somebody. So anime doesn't necessarily have that. It's very, very rare that you'll go through an agent to book an actor for anime.
Okay.
No.
How do actors and directors develop interesting characters in animation or anime?
We talk about it, and I think as an actor, one of the best things you can do is be observant and make little mental notes. Like if you're in the grocery store and you see some guy that just said something that was kind of caught you as weird or funny or had some little nuance to him that you're like, that's unique, I've never seen that before, then remember that and bring that into a session and add that to that bag of tricks that I mentioned earlier. So and as a director, I do the same thing. I whenever I find someone I think is a true character in real life, I make a little mental note about what made them that memorable character, and try and add that to the aspect of something that I can do for animation. And sorry, my computer is doing weird things.
Don't you love technology?
Yes. I wanted to make sure I knew that I had this interview right now. And work with the director, work with the actor. Again, an open dialogue is the best thing you can possibly do. Listen to the director, and the director says, no, I don't want to make him sound like an old man, so don't insist when he sounds like an old man. And listen to the actor when the actor says, I want to try something. Great, let's see it, try it. And also, and this is an important note also for new actors, is don't give a voice to a director that you can't sustain over a series. So if you give a voice that's really gravelly, that's going to rip your throat out and leave you without the ability to talk the next day, then that's probably not going to be the voice you want to give to that character that you're going to be doing for 2 and 4 hour sessions, however long that series is going to last. Be smart about that. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind, is make sure it's a sustainable voice you can keep. If it's one session that you're going to do and never do that character again, and you don't mind blowing your throat out for that session, great, do it. It's fun, something different, and you've added a new voice to the cadre of things you've created. But if it's a reoccurring character, be smart about where you place that voice.
Have you run into that problem very often?
No, because most actors, will know that. And I'm at this point in my career, when I can tell an actor might be struggling a little bit with a voice, I will ask them, can you sustain that voice? Do you sure that after this 2 or 3 hour session, the voice will still be the same, that you haven't suddenly, the voice won't be so raw by the end of it that you're going to sound like you've been smoking non-filtered cigarettes for the past 3 hours. Or is it something that you think that you can do without hurting your voice? And that's a skill in and of itself for a voice actor to learn, is where to place your voice that isn't going to tear it up. And particularly in video games, there's a lot of screaming. So you need to either just get used to the fact that you book video games at the end of the day, or aren't going to book anything after it, or you learn, and there are classes and videos and all kinds of things teach you where to place your voice in a scream that gives a producer what they want, but doesn't rip out your vocal cords.
I thought that was one thing that was really interesting with Mela Lee, because she screamed, and a lot of people when they scream their voice sounds really thin, but her scream actually sounded quite full-bodied.
Yeah, and that's actually the most important thing, and that's generally a general giveaway on a new actor versus a more seasoned actor is on a mic, thin voices, they don't sound good. They just sound unprofessional, for lack of a better word. And so when you hear a scream, you want it to come from the diaphragm. You don't want it to come from the throat. So Mella's learned that in order for her to scream, it has to come from deep in and build. Otherwise, if you just scream, it sounds cheap. It doesn't have that satisfaction of a true scream. And there's the art of the scream is something that you could actually talk about as a voice actor, because there's a lot of nuance to what a scream consists of. And it could be, a shriek, it could be a scream of excitement, it could be, a scream of horror, like, a death rattling scream. Or, there's a lot to it. It's not just a scream. The scream has many, many layers to it, and it depends on the situation.
So does that mean that screams should be a feature on the demo reel?
Yes, actually it does. It really does. The scream on a demo reel is something you should do, and also efforts, because also with animation, you do a lot in games. You do either a hit or it's going to be a throw or something like that, and you can tell how well you practice those stuff, because it isn't something that we do in normal speaking. We don't pick up a pen and go ha or whatever. If you're doing a fighting game and you've got a sword in your hand, you're gonna go ha, and that needs to come from someplace that sounds very natural and real. And so you need to be comfortable with the idea that you know how to make warrior sounds or soldier sounds or whatever it is that you could have in some of this make-believe world. And that's something that my dog just walked in. That you need to do as a voice actor. And Mella has mastered that because it's something hard. It's been very difficult and different.
I can see your dog in the background. He's so cute. Would you like to introduce us?
This is Freddie. Here, I will tilt the camera down and see if that helps.
Oh, that's good. Hello, Freddie.
Give me 5. There you go.
Oh.
Freddie thinks it's dinner time, but it's not. It's not even close.
But he's trying to con you.
Yes, Freddie can play me very well. Freddie has learned that skill. Okay. Go there. Leave it. No. Okay. So, we'll ignore Freddie for now.
So Freddie's a bit of an actor himself.
See? Yes. Freddie actually goes to the studio quite a bit. Freddie's a good studio dog.
Oh, good. How gorgeous. What makes a series interesting for you or memorable for you as a director?
I find that I am more inclined to want to do ensemble cast than anything else. I seem to work really well with that, but I'm not necessarily something that has to take place. But for me, I guess it's a good development of characters, to see a good arc in a character, to see that happen. That's what's going to be a show that I'm going to be interested in, is to see that there is actually a story and there is a place for the actor to start and end and to have a good arc in there. That, I think, is kind of the basis for any good story.
When you're talking about ensemble work, do you have more than one actor in the sound booth at a time, or is it still one actor on their own?
So this goes back to, again, the difference between anime and original animation. So in original animation, you will have an ensemble cast. You will record multiple actors at once, and they will be in the same studio. They'll have their mics, they'll have their individual scripts and the individual little stands, and they have their own little space. That becomes harder to do with anime because you've got to hit the picture. So you're going to spend a good portion of your time not only working on performance, but making sure that you're hitting sync. And so that becomes impossible to do with another actor, because you have to be able to work with the lines individually and kind of nudge them around within the picture to get them to hit. And if you have another actor's line on top of it, then you don't have as much freedom to move the actual line of dialogue around. So anime is done one actor at a time, one line at a time. Whereas original animation might be you run a whole scene together like a radio play, with a bunch of actors in the room together, and you just go ahead and run the scene like it's a normal scene from a play, or the best analogy is a radio play, and you guys just run it. So that's why they're very different situations. They each have their pros and cons. It's nice to be able in anime to know exactly what's happening in the scene. You see the artwork, you know where the character is, you know we know where they're going to start and end with this particular bit of dialogue. That's great. You don't always have as much artwork as maybe you would like in original animation to make sure that you're comfortable taking this actor somewhere, because you don't necessarily have a visual representation to confirm that's where it's going to end up.
That sounds, it sounds to me like the animation would have more energy, whereas with the anime, the challenge is more an issue of perfectionism.
It can be, but and it depends on, I think, the situation. I, as a director, am always more inclined to err on the side of performance as opposed to technical. So if we get a really great performance and we maybe don't have perfect sync, but it works, I'm inclined to say it's fine, let's move on, as opposed to going for the technical and at the risk of hurting the performance. That's not what it should be about. And you'll notice that even original animation, their sync isn't absolutely perfect. There will be an extra flap there at times. And you know what? And if that's what the audience member is zeroing in on, then you've screwed up. We've screwed up on a much larger scale if that becomes what is most important at that point in the scene.
Yes, because they're actually out of the story and looking at the technical.
Exactly. Then then there's a whole bigger problem you need to address.
Wow, it's a really fascinating area, and there's so much to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, you're right. It's more, I think, more than anything, it's less technical and more of just a sense, a feel for it, a rhythm. And I think that, and that was one of the interesting things you talked about, how I got it, how new directors get into it. And I say you just meet people. The way that I got into it was, I was friends with Eric Sherman, who owns Bang Zoom Studios. And he had seen some of my work, and he had said, you've got an interesting rhythm to your work. And I think that animation is a lot about rhythm, and I would agree with that. And so that was why he brought me in for my first directing project. So it isn't necessarily that there is a huge complicated ball to do. But it's about finding the musicality of it that makes it successful, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Because there's so much in music. There's mood, and there's timing, and there's yeah.
Yeah, it is. And when it all works, it's like a well orchestrated piece. When animation is fully working on all levels, it's like a well composed piece of music. And it should be. I think that's a really good analogy for it.
So are you a really musical person?
I do know, I have been in bands. I was someone who was given piano lessons as a kid. I've always played an instrument. So yeah, and I think that helps. I'm not someone who goes out and plays in bars every night, but I can pick up a guitar or a piano or something like that and do okay. And I think that it's not necessarily imperative, but it helps. Again, it's also one of those things where learning a different medium can have bigger ramifications on you as a creative person on multiple things. It helps stretch your mind and learn things from a different perspective that may be applicable to something you never thought. So my sense of rhythm that I developed playing piano as a 6-year-old is something that I still, when I'm writing dialogue, I tap out the rhythm of the dialogue, because to me, a good banter between characters has rhythm the way a musical piece will have rhythm. So I think that all of those things carry across, and it helps you as an individual to be a more rounded and more interesting creative person.
So you highly recommend actors and directors?
I recommend trying all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I recommend, if anything interests you, pursue it.
Because it'll add and help you grow.
Yeah, it'll help you grow, and it will. It'll be, again, it'll be one of those little things that you go back to, and you never know when something is going to cause inspiration and where you're going to get inspiration from. So I think that there are lots of ways to try and pursue things that interest you, that, it may seem like, how could I possibly do that? How could I possibly be a voice actor? It's so far removed of my daily thing. go home and record yourself on your phone, record yourself on your computer, and do that until you find, okay, I actually do like this, it's fun. You invest some time, then invest, some money and buy a beginner entry-level microphone. And if you're still enjoying it, then we move from there. I think that there are multiple ways to take entry-level steps into anything that interests you. And if you can't find it, then just think about it a little differently, or Google it and start from there. I think that pursuing every aspect of your interest is something that makes you a very interesting creative person.
Yes, I'd definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about upcoming projects that you're working on?
Right now, there's the Legrand show for Viz, and there's always going to be a little bit of League of Legends, it seems like. I am hopefully going to start another show at the beginning of the year that I can't talk too much about, but it has the potential to be a really great show. I'm excited about it. So hopefully come January-ish, I can do a little Twitter announcement on it and talk more about it. But it should be good. There's a couple of interesting projects that I have my fingers crossed on for next year. So I will look forward to being able to release those to the universe and say what they are, after the holidays.
So basically, we should be following you on Instant Christie and Facebook to find out what's coming up.
I'm just saying, if you want to know the cool stuff, you know where to find it.
Well, thank you for the heads up.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for talking to Dark Matter today, Christy. It's been really interesting, even though I'm not aspiring to be an actor or director.
Well, good. I'm glad that you find that to be the case. It's it's an odd little profession, a little corner of the animation world that we take up, and I do think it's an interesting little nook that we have, and I'm glad that you find it to be such.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun.